Hey folks, Steve here with another Fatal Alliances video, continuing our playthrough of a single turn of the game. It's been a little while since my last video. I think I say that every single video that I've ever made. It's been a few weeks. That is largely because I have a lot of personal stuff going on, all good stuff, and I hope to be able to share more details of that over the next couple of months, mostly having to do with I'm moving. I'm going to be moving, and it's going to be a good move to where I'm going to an upgrade in a lot of ways. And once I get settled in, I might even be able to start using an actual video camera to do some war game videos, and I'll even have a dedicated gaming space where I can have all of my games set up on nice shelving units and have a lot of open space and tables to play something like World in Flames physically out on a bunch of tables. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to take a long time before all of that's situated, so my time's going to be crunched, but I did get a chance to kind of sit down and plan out yet another turn of or another impulse of the turn that we've been playing through. So we are looking at what I think is now Impulse 7. And if we look at our sort of track, yeah, we're on Impulse 7. It's going to be a Central Powers Impulse. We are going to potentially be looking at the end of the actual impulses at some point. We're now in the time frame where at the end of this impulse there's a 10% chance, 10% base chance, that the turn will end and we'll go to the end of turn resolution, which will be probably several videos. And now a couple of things. This is, at this point in the turn, a really critical and tough decision-making time for the Central Powers. Namely because if I decided to have the Central Powers begin to pass and not take any action, they could potentially boost the percentage chance to end the turn up to 30%, which is pretty significant, in the hopes of ending the turn early and having solid gains across the board of what they've taken. You're going to see here that a lot of units are face down. They're sort of run out of gas because they've been in combats and they flipped, or I guess that's most of the reason why they're flipped, or some of the militia and reserves that have come in flipped, and so we're starting to run out of active units that can take a lot of actions right now. And so, you know, the sooner the turn ends, the sooner everything can sort of get refreshed and the fight can continue. But I think during this impulse, the Central Power is going to want to make a few last-ditch efforts to put the hurtin' on the Allies. And I'm going to do a few special things in this video to demonstrate a few different mechanics that we haven't covered yet. And I think we're going to do some really fun stuff based on how I named the video down below. What could be the Battle of Jutland, or Jutland. I don't know the correct way to pronounce that. But I think we're going to try to do that because the Central Powers are going to do a lot of fun stuff. In terms of a long-term strategy, I might, you know, if I was playing this as a full game, and I don't think I'm going to, I think once I'm done with this video series, I'm just going to call this particular playthrough quits and just, you know, maybe restart it or focus on the World in Flames game for World War II. I would maybe take less drastic actions because obviously, you know, the more risk you take at the beginning of a game, if those risks don't pay off well, that's really going to hurt your long-term game. But because I know I'm only playing this turn, I'm going to try to do as many drastic things to show you as many of the game mechanics as I can, so you get a full sort of experience of the game and the turn that I'm showing you anyway. And so with that sort of in mind, we'll get into it here. I did do the weather roll for this turn, for this impulse set. We've been doing those rolls for the Central Powers. You know, it's every other impulse. I rolled a 2. In terms of the weather, that basically means the weather is fine everywhere except for the North Monsoon region, again, which really is only going to matter in the regions that are sort of along here. So if there's any off the coast of Zanzibar, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and then certain parts of the South China Sea. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what sea zone this is, but I believe it is part of the South China Sea, so it's sort of divided into multiple weather zones depending on where you're at. And then some places out in the Pacific. So weather's not going to be a huge issue, and unfortunately, I don't think in this particular video series we're going to get to see a lot of the effects of weather. Just keep in mind that if you're playing the game, that weather impacts your supply distance, and so terrible weather is going to severely disrupt your supply lines in terms of how far units can be from an HQ or secondary supply source, so that's a pretty big deal. And then it also has impacts on combat and other things like that. So while we won't see a lot of issues with weather in this video series, it's a simple thing to read the rules on, and just the obvious takeaway from that is the winter months there won't be as much fighting, or things will be a little more constrained. The turns will go by quicker because there may be a lot of passing, and you'll also be using those winter months to try to get things back in order, build more units without losing a lot of units, potentially get some morale back because you can spend more production on morale, and then also spending production on more offensive points to save up for your spring and summer offensives in the following year. So haven't really talked too much about that so far, but something to keep in mind. So now we're going to look at the actual impulse, and we actually have 3 different countries that we need to do actions for, and I need to kind of be careful with how I do this, because I've not really done this before, but I think it's worth showing. So obviously the only Central Powers that are active are Germany and Austria-Hungary, but because Japan is in the war, because they've sort of joined up with the Commonwealth to deprive the Germans of their Pacific holdings, Japan actually will get to take some actions, but they will be controlled by the German faction, the German player. In this case, it's all me. But if I take a quick look at the world map again, there were the Commonwealth-controlled units that are limited by the Commonwealth activity limits, and they just move some ships out, some basic stuff. But now we actually are going to get to move around the German-controlled Japanese units, and I'm going to be doing a couple of things along the way through this video that are going to seem kind of complex. I'll try to explain as I go. It also means this video is going to be pretty darn long. I'm just going to say it right now. I know a lot of my videos have been long. This one's probably going to be long, even though I've planned as well as I could all the actions that I'm going to take ahead of time. So it just, this is your feature-length awesome video of the time as we get into some interesting actions. For the sake of counter management, all of these German-controlled units are either just I've had set up in Tokyo or otherwise. So basically the hexes are so compressed in here, and the stacking limits of the world map are in such a way that you can just assume I've got everything in the right hex to do what I'm going to do later in the turn. Things are just a little compressed here, so just for my own sake, I threw some units over here, I threw some units over here. I've got the ships, they're not in Kyoto because there's no port there. They're obviously here. I just am trying to keep things organized. So keep that in mind when we get there. So Japan's going to be doing some stuff. Austria-Hungary is going to be doing some stuff, and Germany's obviously going to be doing some stuff. And if we take a look at our sequence of play, no more declarations of war. I don't see anything worth declaring at this point. And so we're going to do choosing actions, and I'm going to be doing a couple of special things this time that we haven't seen up to this point. So right out of the gate, I'm just going to declare that Japan kind of has to do a combined action. So when we're in the state of Japan being partially active, when the German units are moving and they move the Japanese units, the Japanese units are being moved as if they had taken a combined action. So that means 1 air mission, 2 naval moves, 1 rail move, 2 land moves, and 1 land attack. We're not going to necessarily use all of those actions, but we're going to use enough of them so that just by default Japan's doing a combined action. Austria-Hungary will be doing a combined action. What we're going to end up doing is a few land adjustments, and then we're going to do some naval action actually with the Austrian fleet, and that'll be kind of interesting to see what happens there. And Germany is going to be doing some really special stuff this time. So, uh, one, their sort of base action is going to be a land action. They still have to declare a action no matter what, and you'll see why I'm trying to be specific here. They're going to be doing a land action because they will be doing a HQ offensive, spending offensive points to power up an HQ, to power up units, to double their combat strength for a land combat. I want to make sure I'm able to do that. If I were to take any other action, even a combined, I can't actually power up an HQ unit to do that. So if I did a combined, I couldn't power up an HQ unit. But because I want to do a lot of naval action, now is a critical time for Germany to do naval actions, but I still want to punch the Allies a little bit on the land front, I'm going to do something special with performing unlimited actions. So just to do this in the proper order, and if you've got the rules open, which, you know, if you've been watching the videos up to this point, I recommend you keep a copy of the latest rules, which are available on Board Game Geek, open so you can sort of follow along as I do these different actions. We're going to take a look at section 18. 18 point, you know, for this one we're going to be looking at 18.2 in the rulebook, describing how to spend offensive points for unlimited actions. So you may see a number discrepancy. So in the latest rules, if you spend 7 offensive points at the start of the impulse, your major power may perform unlimited land, air, and naval moves. Rail moves are based on your land action. If you're reading the rulebook and it says anything other than 7, you're probably using the older rules, which has a different number. I can't remember what it was. So make sure you're using the latest rules. But by doing that, that means even though we're taking a land action, which enables us to use HQ benefits, we're spending the extra 7 so that I can, along with all of the land actions that I'd like to be able to do, I can do as much naval actions as I want. Now, in terms of efficiency, doing this right now in the game probably is not the most efficient way to use my offensive points. Mostly because, you know, spending these 7 points will give me unlimited land actions, or unlimited land moves, but I'm not really going to be doing a lot of moves anyway with my land units. You can see most of the land units for Germany here on the map are flipped down. So this isn't really the most efficient way of doing it, but I'm doing this again to show you the effectiveness of doing this, and at different times of the game you may find that there are really opportune moments to perform this and do some really devastating stuff against your opponent. So right now, I am going to declare that Germany will be spending 7 offensive points to perform unlimited actions during this impulse. So we're going to go to the offensive points, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see where we're at. The German, the gray offensive points right now is on the 22. So if we are going to spend 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's going to bring us down to 15 offensive points. And if you look just on here, Germany has so many more offensive points than everyone else. In fact, most other folks have already spent out most of their offensive points at this point. And, you know, the reality is, just like in the real World War I, offensive points were sort of built up before the war, and the major powers basically burned through their stockpile of ammunition and arms very quickly, and they ended up having a really huge problem with supplying more ammunition to the front for a while. And that sort of was a problem that they always sort of dealt with throughout the war, and this game has that as well. You know, it's really easy to just spend these points. It's much harder to build them back up to any certain degree. So, you know, Germany's probably never going to have this many offensive points. We're going to be struggling to build them back up, but now's a great time to do it. So we're going to spend those 7, and then because we're also at the beginning of our land action, we would like to spend the points to power up one of our units. So we're going to specify one of our face-up HQs, and we're going to say that we are going to be doing HQ benefits for that unit, and that means that that HQ is going to be able to double the combat factors of some land units for land combat. So I'm going to be designating right here von Bülow, or Bülow here, the counter. He's pretty much the only face-up HQ left on the map. It's also a question, do I want to spend any other offensive points to restore an HQ unit to be flipped face up. So I kind of need to decide that now as well. So I have 15 defensive points. Powering up Von Bülow is going to cost us 9. And let me check my notes. I took a bunch of notes, but yeah, 9. So that's going to leave us with 6 left over, which means we could still reorg some headquarters units, but I'm not sure I'm going to need to do that. So I think I'm going to refrain from refreshing any other HQs. We're just going to power up Von Bülow. That's going to leave us with 6 offensive points left over, which is, I think, right about where a lot of other folks are at. Yep. And leave that 6 to be a floater for now. I'm not sure the Allies have enough power to really hurt us, where we're going to need our other HQs flipped up for other stuff. You know, the end of the turn is coming, so we'll be a little bit risky here. So we'll spend the 9. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Over here now, also in the 6th space with a lot of other folks, and Von Bülow is powered up. I'm going to go ahead and give him a quick label, change label, and we're going to say HQ benefit, just so we remember that Von Bülow is powered up and he's going to lend the bonus to some units later in the impulse. Going back to our sequence of play, so now that we've sort of designated that, we get to our naval movement. So this is going to be where things are going to kind of slow down in the video a little bit, because we're going to be doing a lot of these. There's going to be a lot of action going on, and I want to make sure that we resolve these as best we can and as carefully as we can. So something to keep in mind is that when you perform impulses, technically each power is supposed to be taking all of their moves simultaneously, but when it comes to naval movement, you're supposed to be making your naval movements sort of one at a time, and so that the order that you do your naval movements in can be sort of important, and I'm going to illustrate why that is as it relates to Germany and Japan. So we're not going to be doing any naval air missions, and what a naval air mission really means is sending units, air units, out to a sea box and placing them. And I haven't done that. I haven't really felt the need to do that. There's only a few units that you can actually do that with, and up to this point, I've just not wanted to do that. So we're going to do naval movement. And I need to be careful with how I do this, because it's going to be sort of an interesting run through. And just for the sake of my own video making, you know, I'm not going to do all of Germany's naval moves. I'm just going to sort of work my way around the map and resolve these as best I can. And keep in mind, Germany can now do unlimited naval moves. I'm actually going to be making quite a few to deal with some of the issues that I want to try to resolve and get done up for us. So, and again, a lot of these strategic decisions I'm making is there with the idea that the turn's going to end soon. It probably won't end this impulse. The Allies will probably get to go one more time, but they may not be able to do enough to stop what we're going to try to do. Or at least we're going to cause enough of a disruption that they are going to have a hard time dealing with what we've done. And if the turn keeps going longer, then, you know, that just may be the way it is. So, let's see. Naval moves. Let's look at the Pacific map. So, one of the things that we need to kind of keep in mind is that there are a certain set of rules relating to Japan taking Tsingtao from the Germans. Once they do that, there's a couple of things related to the 21 demands on China, and you know, then the Allied player has to make a decision. We'll cover all of that here in a little bit if the invasion goes successfully. Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have Japan, the German-controlled Japanese units invade Tsingtao. Now, I could wait on that, but the longer that Tsingtao is controlled by Germany, Japan drifts towards the Allies and could become a full Allied player, and then Germany loses all of its objectives controlled by Japan. So I don't think we want... I think it's just worthwhile to get Tsingtao out of the way. If you're trying to understand what I'm talking about, it's somewhere in section 15 of the rules. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. With the special rules related to Japan and China. It's worth a read. But basically, what Germany wants to do at this point is, we know we're going to lose Tsingtao. I mean, I'm going to make it so that Tsingtao gets taken by the Japanese. That's just what's going to happen. The Commonwealth isn't going to get there in time, but just the sooner we get that taken care of, the better. But I don't want to lose these guys. I want Nuremberg, Emden, Scharnhorst. I want to try to get them back home somehow, or at least get them out of danger here, because if we performed the invasion first, or rather, we got it situated where there are a bunch of Japanese ships out here, that could pose a problem. It's already bad that the Commonwealth put some Japanese units here in the sea. We need to get these guys out of here, and I think what I'm going to have them do is move from here to Palau, and then on some future impulse as they can, they'll eventually try to make it to Dar es Salaam. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but we want to get them in safer waters. Not that East Africa is exactly the safest place to be for any German units at this point, but I think I would rather have them there than clear across the world where they're in trouble here of getting cut off and destroyed. Keep in mind, they are not out of supply. Each friendly port can supply up to 3 naval units, surface naval units, which pretty much wherever these guys go, as long as they're controlled by Germany, will be in supply. We don't need to worry about any neutral portage, which causes some issues politically. You'd have to check the rules on that, but I'm going to try to avoid doing that. So the first naval move I'm going to make is I'm going to try to get these guys out of the China Sea into South China Sea, which, we're going to have some British units to have to worry about in Singapore probably before we can get out of Dodge. But, these German units can't make it all the way to Dar es Salaam in one go. I feel better about trying to get them to Palau first and then getting them down the way. At least that, in my mind, I guess that's how I'm going to do it. Yeah. I mean, alternatively, what I could do is, if I wanted to, I could try to move these guys as close to Dar es Salaam as possible. And my only issue is going to be that I'm not going to be able to get all the way there. So the closest I think I can even get is if I just moved as briskly as possible. And these guys actually have pretty great movement. 5. It would be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They could get to the Azanian Sea in the 0 box. And maybe that actually may end up being a better thing to do here. Yeah, I'm reviewing the rules. Sorry for the silence. I'm just at the end of the turn. I may be able to just have them return to base and just end up there. So, let's see. Yeah, that actually might be the better option. Instead of going to Palau, we could just try to make it to the Azanian Sea, and then when it comes time to return to base, they can return to Dar es Salaam, I think. Yeah, okay, yeah, I think that's the better action to do. So we're going to have this German flotilla here run the gambit, run all the way through, and try to make it to the Azanian Sea, where at least whenever they're next, they're going to end up in the 0 box, which means they'd be easy to catch. But assuming all else is fine, they can get to the German port later. They can return to base there. So that's probably what we're going to need to do. Now, even having made that decision, I still have to make it past this group of Japanese ships. There's a couple of pretty strong vessels, and these guys are pretty weak. So it's going to be a tough call, and they may end up getting held up. So I'm going to scroll my PDF back to the naval movement. Now, if I were playing with an optional rule, there'd be, this rule about an optional rule about in the presence of the enemy, which would limit our movement, and we wouldn't even be able to get as far as we would want to there. I'm not playing with any optional rules for the purposes of these demonstration videos, so we'll just skip past that. So, let's see. Okay, so this is what we'll do. We'll go ahead and perform this. So these guys are going to leave Tsingtao, and they're going to go out to the South China Sea. Now, by doing that, the Commonwealth, the Allied player, because they control this stack of Japanese units, can try to intercept. So if you want to try to intercept, you announce whether you are committing subs to the intercept. There are no subs here. They're all normal surface vessels. Now they would turn a unit face down, and so I think in this case, we'll go ahead and turn this guy face down. That doesn't mean they can't fight or anything. It just means they're using up some of their, we'll say, initiative to do the search. So let's see. To find out if the interception succeeds, roll a die. You succeed if you roll the modified search number or less of the highest section that contains one of your committed units at war with at least one moving unit. So what we need to do is we're going to roll a die, and we have a 20% chance, a 1 or a 2, a 1 or a 2 on a D10 to intercept. So let's see if the Japanese Commonwealth-controlled units are able to intercept the moving German flotilla. They do not. They do not. So if your roll is higher than the modified search number, your interception attempt fails. Because the fleet was not more than 10 ships, we didn't get a subtraction, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway. And now these guys finish moving as if nothing happened. So it would be 1, 2, because I believe these are adjacent, right? You go from the China Sea to the South China Sea. It is a little weird that some of the weather here is split, but because it's rain, there's not really actually anything impacting our ability to move units through. So they just move through some rain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then finally 5. And now they're in the 0 box here of the Azanian Sea off the coast of Zanzibar and Tanganyika. Sorry. I can't pronounce anything. I apologize. I'm a dumb American. Okay, so that movement is now complete. So we do not need to worry about any other really major issues with that. So they got away relatively clean. Good job, Germans. Now, for the next naval move, I am going to have the German-controlled Japanese units make a move. And so what I'm going to have happen here is, because they get 2 naval moves, I'm going to have, firstly, the convoy points here move out to the 0 box as a move, and that's mostly because the Japanese actually do have some holdings that aren't direct. So just for the sake of having the proper convoy points down the road, I just move them out there. Now this is actually better for the Commonwealth and the Allies for this, because if Japan becomes an active ally, then all these things actually matter. But I'm just going to move them out just to get that resolved. Doesn't really matter. And so then I will have these guys come out. And let's see. I'm going to choose to have everything go into the one box. This whole flotilla here. It's going to be a little crowded here for a bit. Now you're going to notice I've got the left two counters that are zoomed in here. One's a transport, one's an amphibious unit for deploying infantry units. I am, even though I haven't dragged the counters over, I am with this flotilla embarking some units. And so I'm going to be taking this Imperial Guard Marine unit. It is going to be, and I'm just declaring this now, being transported on the TRS, the transport unit. And then we are going to have let's see. And boy, I probably don't even need all these ships. Yeah, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to actually keep a couple of these guys back. And you'll see why in a later action here. We don't have enough activity limits to really do it right now, but I think that'll be sufficient. And then we are going to take this really strong core, and that's going to be deployed on the amphibious unit. And the reason why I'm doing that is any amphibious unit, the Marines, I should say, the Marine unit can invade from a transport unit and not flip down afterwards. But for a regular core or above sized unit that invades, will be turned face down at the end of the invasion unless they were invading from an amphibious unit. And so I want to keep these guys face up. That's just sort of the most efficient way to do it. And the thing is, these other surface vessels, a surface vessel can actually transport divisions. And if I had more activity limits, I would consider loading some of these divisions onto these guys and sending them down to truck, for instance. But right now, because this area's in some rain, it doesn't seem like a great idea, and we just simply don't have the activity limits to do it. So these guys will just move out, and they're going to be out here on the... I'm just going to... Yeah, some of the labels are missing here, but these are all German-controlled units. So, yeah, so all these guys are in the C Box 1, which is going to provide, I think, some benefits down the road for invasion. So they're ready, they're off the coast, they don't have as far to go, I don't think, for the invasion. We'll get to that. But these guys are poised to invade Tsingtao. That's basically what's happened at this point, and that naval move is complete. So we're going to move on now to the Austro-Hungarian naval move. So let me zoom in a little bit. We're going to leave, obviously, some units behind. So let me just grab them. Obviously, we're not taking the transports because there's no reason to. There may be a reason to later. Okay, there we go. And these guys are... Now, they don't have a huge amount of range, but because this dotted line costs nothing to move past, they can come directly out into the one box of the Central Mediterranean. So, even though that is probably... Yeah, it's going to be a pretty close little fight here. Let's say these guys are going to come out and just stay in the Adriatic, and you guys will see kind of what I'm up to, probably in a future impulse. But I think what we'll just do is we'll put them here. I thought about sending them out to the Central Mediterranean, but they simply aren't going to end up in the best C box for search. These guys have better range, and so they're more likely to find them than they will find the French. So I'm going to set them up here. They're going to protect the Adriatic, and then, yeah. You can see there's a transport here, and we've got a unit that is face down. When that unit becomes face up, we could, via transport, invade Tirana and take Albania from the Allies. And so we're sort of setting ourselves up to be able to do that. You know, had I decided to do a naval move down the road, we could sort of, you know, we could potentially do some other stuff like move some of these longer range units out here, but I just, it feels a little iffy. We'd probably lose, or we'd get beat up pretty bad because this French fleet is actually relatively decent size, though not particularly powerful. But the same goes here. There's not exactly a huge number of very powerful ships. We've got a couple of really good battleships, but for the most part, it's just not there yet. So that's going to be fine. In terms of land moves, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of movement here. And now we've created an issue of supply for these guys here. The zone of control. So they moved 1, 2, 3, 4. If I check my terrain, okay, technically I can't do that yet. We're doing naval movements. I'm jumping the gun. I'm jumping the gun, guys. Okay, when we get back to that, we are going to have these Hussar units move up to here, where they will still be in supply for weather purposes, and they're going to cut off supply for the Serbian units, which is going to be pretty key factor in this front. So we'll remember that when we get to land moves, but for now, we'll keep moving on for our other naval movement. Just making a note here to remind myself. So now we're going to have the rest of the German naval moves. I had considered moving some units here to the Baltic and try to eliminate these Russian units, but it would mean separating my very large fleet here. Yeah, separating this very large fleet, and I don't really want to do that. I think I want to keep everyone together, and I think we're going to challenge the Commonwealth Navy. I don't know how that's going to go. We're going to find out, but I think that's what I want to do. If we can come out here and we can punch the Commonwealth in the face, I think that would be an excellent way to get the Commonwealth on their heels out of the gate, because this is probably as strong as the German fleet's ever going to be. We just simply aren't going to have the production to build up a lot of ships down the line, so this might be the best time to do it. I think they have more ships here, and so that's just going to have to sort of be the you know, it's going to be a chance, right? It's going to be a chance. And I have heard of, you know, the German fleet beating a Commonwealth fleet in Jutland here in this game, so it's possible. We'll see what happens. Before I do that, however, I would like to move my German submarines as some naval moves, and I'm actually going to do it as 2 different moves, because these 2 subunits, these are the subunits that I start the game with over here. I'll center it. They have different ranges. So they can go out far, and I'm going to need them to do that, but they're not going to be able to patrol quite as well, or they're going to be in a lower sea box. That's fine, because I have unlimited naval moves, because I spent the offensive points for it. I'm going to move this guy 1 out to the North Sea, and they can't be intercepted. A sub-flotilla only cannot be intercepted, so they're just going to fly right past these guys. 1, 2 to the Faroes Gap, and they're just going to occupy the 0 box. This other subunit will move separately and move 1, 2, and then spend its 3rd bit of range. Uh-oh, I'm freezing. Uh-oh. Oh no. I think my vassal froze. So we're going to hold on a second, but I'm going to want to put this guy in the 1 box. And once I've done that, it's going to enable me to potentially destroy some of these convoys out here and hurt the Commonwealths that way. And the reason why I need to kind of start doing this is that the Commonwealth needs to be hurt in terms of morale as hard as I can. Uh-oh, where'd the sub go? Oh, there it is. Okay. There we go. We're not frozen anymore. Okay. So these subs are going to be able to start hitting convoys, and we want that to happen. By doing this, this will also draw these other units potentially over here to try to defend and thin out the numbers here. I need to get units from Kiel into the North Sea, because if I don't, the Germans will actually lose morale heavily, because if there are Commonwealth units in the North Sea with these American convoys that are bringing trade to Germany, they can affect the convoys. They can basically seize the trade, and that's going to mean a huge hit for morale to the Germans. And I stop that by having German units in the sea zone. So at the very least, you know, if I get this stack out here and we miss the Commonwealth and we don't fight, that's okay. We can protect the trade that we need to have happen here. So we are going to have this stack here move, and they're going to end up in the 2 box right alongside the Commonwealth. And now the Commonwealth is going to need to decide if they're going to try to intercept. And in this case, you know, all it's going to mean is there's a greater chance for combat. So if the Commonwealth wants combat to happen, that's really what's going to matter here. So let's see. Oops, and I accidentally took a militia unit as well. Didn't mean to do that. So let's see. So I guess the Commonwealth will try to intercept. I mean, I don't know that it really matters, but we'll try it. I just don't know if this is going to be good or bad, but I guess it doesn't matter. Because there is a seaplane carrier, and I better make sure of this. So this isn't actually a search roll, this is an interception roll, so I don't think the Commonwealth is going to get the bonus for the seaplane carrier. Normally, if you have a seaplane carrier, you can treat your sea box as 1 greater. I think that only counts on natural search rolls. So we'll see. So what we're going to do is the Commonwealth's going to roll to intercept. They have a -1 because the stack that is leaving here it does contain more than 10 ships. So we'll see. And no. So the interception is not successful. The interception is not successful. Okay, so now this unit is where it wants to be. It's in the sea zone, an equal measure as the Commonwealth. And the thing about this is now, when it comes to the combat phases, the naval combat phases, if the Germans said, no, I don't want to initiate a combat here and have us do the searches, the Commonwealth player could then decide that they want to do that because there is an enemy naval combat phase. So I think no matter what, there's going to be a chance that there's a Battle of Jutland here. We'll find out. Then obviously there could be some combat related to here with the convoys. So we'll see how that goes. And then I think that's all the naval moves that we wanted to make. So I think we can finally move on. We're an hour in, and I apologize, but like I said, this is going to be a long one, so stick with. Oh shoot, I closed the sequence of play file again. Okay, so now our naval combat. So let's take a look here. Once you've made all your naval moves, you can, if you wish, initiate naval combat. So I may only try to initiate combat once in each sea area, each naval combat step. You can try to initiate naval combat.
you can't if you chose a land or pass action, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's see. If we look back on the map, there's really only a couple of areas that any of that can happen in, right? We can't do anything on the world map, so really the only naval combats that we could have are our Battle of Jutland, potentially, and the Pharaoh's Gap. So let's just look at the Pharaoh's Gap. So let's say Germans decide to initiate combat in the Pharaoh's Gap sea area, and that is because they have their subs, and there are enemy ships here, the convoy point. So, let's see, commit subs. Yes, so the German player must decide if they're going to commit subs. They will do that, and they're going to they're going to try a search. Let's see here. Subtract 1 from your search roll for every 10 enemy convoy points in the sea area. Well, technically there's only 8, so we don't get that bonus. Let's see. Alright, so we're going to try to roll, and the problem will be, we're not going to actually be able to do much with this guy, because it's likely we're not going to be able to roll. So there's a 10% chance that we succeed in finding these convoys. And we failed. If the, let's see, what could the convoys do? I don't think the convoys can do anything, even if they did find... Yeah, they didn't find anything. So while we did try to find one of these guys, and we did attempt to search, yeah, that's too bad. Yep, okay. So we flipped the sub here to commit for the combat search, and we got nothing, unfortunately. So these guys are just going to have to, do nothing. I guess technically it would probably be more beneficial to have flipped this unit. I'm not sure it matters, but there you go. Okay. So now here, I think the Germans, if the Germans don't initiate combat here, the Commonwealth's going to do it. So I think we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's see. So we're gonna do that. Yeah, okay. So, first things first, we're going to take, I guess it doesn't really matter, we're going to take this guy, we're going to flip him face down to initiate the combat in, or the potential for combat here in the North Sea. Each side, I think because the Germans want the best chance possible to find the British, they're going to turn 10 additional units face down to subtract 2 from their die roll. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so they flip 10. They're going to have they're going to subtract 2, and they're going to perform their search roll. So they're going to roll, and let's see. Yeah, so we're going to roll. We're going to subtract 2. So we basically have a 40% chance of finding them. 4 subtract 2 is a 2. So we have successfully found the Commonwealth, so German success. I'll just put that up here. I spelled success wrong. Oh well, need another S. Now these guys, the Commonwealth needs to roll. I think they are going to probably want to, do the same here. So they're going to flip 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. They also are going to get, they're going to treat their C box as 1 higher. Let's see. Sorry, I just got a text message from my wife. So they're going to treat their C box as 3, as if it were 3, and they're also going to get a -2. So they have actually a pretty good chance to get theirs. I'm going to modify what it's German success, effective roll of 2. So they're, yeah, let's see. 3 minus 2. Okay, so they're going to roll. And 4. Okay, so they didn't roll as well. So the British rolled a 6, and they did a -2. So there is a Commonwealth failure, effective roll of 4. Now that's actually really important, right? And I'm going to describe again how that works. So the Commonwealth flipped 10 units to subtract 2 from their die roll. Because they have a seaplane carrier, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it's a seaplane carrier. They've got this little brown star. That means they get a +1 to their search number. So instead of a 2, they would need a 3, but they failed. So even though they rolled a 6, -2 is a 4. 4 is greater than their effective search number of 3. So the Commonwealth failed to find the Germans. So this is really critical. The Germans have found the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth did not find the Germans. So this is a pretty big advantage for the Germans. So if only your side has units included and they've succeeded, they're going to obviously choose, they are going to choose the combat here in the 2 box. So basically both fleets are going to be involved, but because they found the Commonwealth, they're going to have an advantage on surprise points. So let's get the surprise points. You get surprise points equal to the sum of the modified search number in the highest section of the C box that contains a unit you have included in combat. So that's 2. Then we're going to add our opponent's unmodified search roll. So they technically rolled a 6. So that's 8 surprise points for the Germans. Now the Commonwealth is going to get a whole lot less. So let's see. The Commonwealth would get the modified search number of the highest C section. So that would be 3 because of that seaplane carrier. And the opponent's unmodified search roll, and the unmodified search roll was a 4. So 7 surprise points. Interesting. So that's actually not it wasn't as good as we would think, right? The 2 box and yeah, boy. The 2 box and the 6 is 8, and the 3 modified plus the 4 is 7. So this is going to be interesting. So there's only 1 surprise point because you subtract. It's the difference in favor of the person who has the most. So the Germans actually have 1 surprise point, after subtraction. No benefit. You can't spend one surprise point on anything. So really, this is just going to be, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. So, all right, so we are going to fight a service naval combat. And because there's not enough surprise points for anything, I don't think we're going to screen any units. This is going to be a straight up clash. It's going to be a straight up clash. Had the Commonwealth rolled even a little bit worse, the Germans could have affected the chart a little bit, but that's not going to happen here. So this is going to be a really interesting result here of what happens. So let me get the combat chart up, and we'll figure out what we have. And it's going to be simultaneous, remember. So we'll have to work it out. I'll need a little bit of space. All right, so let's do the following. I'm going to get all of this sort of stretched out. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt here. Bear with me. Of course, this is a pretty significant battle, so I think it's going to be okay. So real quick, I'm going to take these guys, I'm just going to add up their combat power, and I'm going to flip them back. So attack factors: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, 17. Just going to mark that. You know, it's okay that they're flipped. They are still part of combat. And then we're going to just add everybody else here. And obviously this is going to be pretty this is going to be pretty intense, honestly. Oh my goodness gracious. This is the one tough thing. And you know, it's funny, online I've seen a few people talk about an expansion or a variant that someone cooked together for this game called Dreadnoughts and Flames, and my gosh, I don't know how you could do it. I mean, there's just so many different units here that you need to keep in mind already, without, you know, doubling the number by adding, you know, even more units. But I can understand people want to get to that level of detail, but this is already a lot. Now, you know, this is what's going to make this video run super long, is resolving this combat. But I do want to point out that like, this is probably going to be one of the most significant naval battles of this entire campaign. Even if you're playing the full four-year campaign, you're not going to see naval combats like this very often, right? So we have the 17 flipped, so now we need to do the rest of 3, 6, 10, 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, 29, 34, 39, 41, 44, 47, 51, 54, 58, 62, 66. I'm going to put 66 unflipped top 2 rows just so I can count better. 6, 11, 16, 21, 25, 28, 31, 35, 38, 42, 45, 48, 53, 59, geez, oh man, 59, unflipped bottom row. And yeah, I'm going to use a, I'm going to use a calculator. just so that I don't screw up my math, because I've been known to do it before. That's 142 attack power. 142. See ya, attack power. And while we're at it, we're going to count up the number of actual vessels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 44 ships. That's 44 counters, right? I mean, that's a lot, right? 44 ships. And let's see. Yeah, see, that's pretty intense. Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave those guys there, and then somehow I'm going to spread out this German set of units here. Looking at this, I'm thinking maybe the Germans have bitten off more than they can chew, but we're gonna find out. We are gonna find out. And again, you know, if you watch my last video on naval combat, a lot of this is very deterministic, right? What matters are those search rolls. And, you know, once all of that is resolved, then it's just a matter of, you know, really determining, you know, where you're going to apply hits, and then where you're applying hits may end up influencing, you know, what units actually survive. You know, do you target units with weaker armor, or do you target units with better armor because you want to get rid of those more powerful units? The decision making is very different than just land combat, and I do like that because, you know, the game fundamentally is able to kind of make each component feel a little bit different. Like air combat, which we haven't done, is very different than everything else as well. So let me, real quick, I am going to pop this in notes so I don't lose track. Alright, what's the unflipped power here? We've got 3, 6, 7, 10, 14, 17, 21, 24, 28, 34 unflipped, or 32 flipped, 34 flipped. Yeah, 34 flipped. 10, 17, 20, 27, 28, 34 flipped. We'll flip them again. And let's see. 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 15, 17, 18, 22, 28, 33. That's top 3 rows, right? Oh god, guys, I'm freaking losing my mind. 10, 15, 17, 18, 22, 26, 28. No, that's top 2 rows. Oh gosh. Alright. 5, 9, 11, 16, 18, 22, 24, 26, 31. So if I add that up correctly, it's going to be 34 plus 33 plus 31. Oh god, that's so much weaker. Oh god, I made a terrible, terrible mistake, I think, with the Germans here. I think I've made a terrible, terrible mistake. Yeah, alright. 98 GE attack power. And this is going to be 12, 22, 31, 33, 33 ships. And just to make sure that we have this right, we'll have the full breakdown here. That's what we're up against. I think this may have been a mistake for the Germans, but you know what? It'll happen. Okay. So let's do some real cross-referencing of the combat charts here. So, the combat power for the Commonwealth is 142. So they're going to use the 130 to 144 column, and they're against 33 ships. So it's going to be the max enemy ship number, which is going to give us Commonwealth results on Germany. 6 X's, 5 D results, and 3 A results. Results on Commonwealth is, so we had 98, so they're in the 86 to 99 column against the maximum number, which is not quite as good, unfortunately, for the Germans. Not quite as good. So it's going to be 5x and, ouch, only 2 D results and 2 A results. Yeah, that's not going to be good. That is not going to be good for the Germans, not one bit. Alright, so this is how we're going to have to play this. It's going to be kind of rough. And just double checking the morale charts here. Let me see here. Let's see here. It is only going to be actual destroyed units that are going to count for major victory, I believe. Yeah, damaged units and convoys don't count for major victories for political points, so that'll at least be in our favor, and then we'll see. Now it's going to come down just to the armor value of these guys. So let's see. The owner selects the first unit. Yeah, Okay. So let's resolve the Commonwealth results on the Germans first. So there's going to be, we're going to implement all the X results first. And so, oh boy. All right. So for the first X, the Germans are going to elect the Kaiser, and it's going to roll a die, and if it rolls a 3 or less, it is sunk. If it rolls a 3 or higher, it's only damaged, and this is going to be important because the better armor is going to mean it's less likely for the unit to actually be hurt. So let's just give it a shot. Okay, so the Kaiser is damaged. Now the Commonwealth can decide what the second effect will be, and can actually choose, let's see, could decide just to get rid of the Kaiser, and so the Commonwealth will decide that the next result will be here as well, the next X result. So though this managed to roll correctly, it gets a second damaged marker, which means this unit is destroyed. So we're going to put it down here in the graveyard, unfortunately. The next one, the Germans are going to have the Stuttgart take it. It probably wasn't smart for us to have the first X result on one of these units, but oh well. So the third X result for the Commonwealth out of 6 will be applied to the Stuttgart. The Stuttgart is destroyed. The next one, the Commonwealth chooses this guy here, and it fails, so this unit is destroyed. So that's 4. The 5th X, the Germans are going to apply to this unit here, this one. And it actually succeeds, so it only becomes damaged. That's amazing. Okay, and then the final X result for the Commonwealth will be they're going to target this unit. We'll go with the König, and the König is actually damaged instead of sunk. Interesting. Okay. Now that all the X's are resolved, and now we're going to have the 5 D's. So the German is going to have this unit, actually this unit, be the first target, and it failed, so it is damaged. The Commonwealth's going to choose the König, and it is merely aborted, so it suffers an abort. Okay, so that was 2. Now the Germans will have the next one be on the Gazelle. So the Gazelle is damaged. And the Commonwealth is going to try to get the König again. And the König is damaged again, and so it is sunk. Oh, this isn't good. This isn't good. It's going in the graveyard. And finally, the Germans get to select the next one, and we'll just choose the Undine here. And it actually just gets an abort. That's funny. Okay. Okay, so then that is all of the Ds. Now there's 3 aborts. The Germans will choose the Markgraf, and it gets a half abort. The Commonwealth will target the Markgraf for the second result, and it succeeded, which means it gets a half abort. So now that becomes a full abort. And then the final abort will be Germans will put on the Sedlitz, assuming that it's going to succeed, and it actually doesn't. So now that is aborted. Okay, and that's all the results. Wow. All right. Intense. Okay, so now the German results on the Commonwealth, which I'm just going to paste again here for ease of use. So, the Commonwealth will elect to have the first sync result be against the Devonshire here, and the Devonshire is sunk. The second X result is going to be applied onto, let's see, we probably want to hurt one of the stronger units, but this seaplane carrier would be nice. So we'll say the seaplane carrier, and the seaplane carrier is sunk. The third X will be applied on the we'll say the diadem, and the diadem is sunk. And then the fourth will pick, the Germans will pick for the fourth X, and that will be the Iron Duke. That seems like one worth trying to take out, so we'll roll. And the Iron Duke actually manages to become simply damaged. And then the final X, the Commonwealth, will select, and we'll choose the Edgar. And yep, the Edgar is sunk. Now there are two damaged. The Commonwealth will select the Endymion, and the Endymion becomes damaged. There's probably more efficient choices in here, but we're just going to try to get through it. And then the last damage, the Germans are going to put on the Iron Duke. They'd like to sink it. And, okay, so then this just becomes a damaged abort. Interesting. Okay. Alright, then we get to abort results, and the Commonwealth will just pick the Kent, and yep, the Kent will be aborted. And then the Germans will select the King George to be aborted. And this is actually a half abort. So, and that's the last, so I'm not even going to mark it. It's not going to abort. Whew. All right. Well, those are all the results. Now the real question is, you know, what happens next? So we're going to get rid of the units that are aborted are going to return at the end of the combat round and return to base. So, that's been aborted. That's damaged and aborted, so, let's see. I believe the damaged units must go to, the repair pool. So the Iron Duke goes into the repair pool. So does this unit here. And I think that's it for the Commonwealth. And then for the Germans, they're going to have a whole bunch in the repair pool. So he's damaged, he's damaged, he's damaged. And then the rest of these guys have to abort. So they're going to just... And I think they all get flipped down when they abort. Yeah. So these guys are flipped and they abort, and they're going to end up back in Kiel. Now the question is, do we go again? I think the Germans got licked here. If we just looked at, you know, they lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 build points, and the Commonwealth only lost 4 build points worth. The number of ships is about equal, but the Germans lost more important ships. I probably should have changed how I worked out some of these, but yep. I think the Germans are just going to have to abort. I think they're going to want to abort. If I don't abort, then we're going to do another another run through, and the Germans are just going to get iced. So I think the Germans tried, but that was the Battle of Jutland, and the Germans didn't do well. All these guys are going to flip because they are going to intentionally abort. So they will just go all in one big fat stack of aborts and go home. They tried and failed, and that means that this American trade is going to become seized probably in the mid-turn. So now the only saving grace here was that these are going to cost for morale more for the Commonwealth than the Germans comparatively, but you know it's not going to make up the difference in morale loss that the loss of trade is going to present for these guys. So overall, this was not great for the Germans. I should have calculated better, but ultimately that's how the game goes. So I was hoping for more surprise points, right? The surprise points actually could have made a bit of a difference here, and it ended up just not doing it, not doing well enough. So these guys are, all going to end up back. We did get rid of the seaplane carrier, which is nice, but all these guys are going to go back to the 2-box, and the graveyard just got a little bit bigger. And that was actually was a major victory for the Allies. So their political points are going to go up by, I believe it's 2. Winning a major victory, 2. Yep. That was a major victory. So that was unfortunate. The Germans tried and they just failed. It just was not good enough. That is a shame. It's too bad. It's too bad. All right, hour and 20 minutes in. We got to keep moving. Opponent's naval combat. There is none. Strategic bombardment. There is none. Let's look at my battle plan. Yeah, no ground strikes, no rail movement. Now we can do some land movement. So we are going to do that. So a couple of things are going to occur here. We're going to have Bulow move 1, 2, and his range 1, 2, 3 will be sufficient for what I want to do. So he's moved up here. We're going to have these units move up to here. And then, let's see. I don't think there's any other major movements at this point. For the Germans anyway, so their movement is complete. We're going to do some minor moves here. Let's see here. I could try to attack here, but probably isn't going to be a great idea. Yeah, okay. So those guys are moved. Then the Austro-Hungarian movement, we're going to have these guys move 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is now cutting off supply for the Serbians due to their zone of control. Not a whole lot we can do about that just yet, but that is good. That's going to force them to sort of retreat. More than likely on the next impulse. Any other movement to make? I don't think so. So land movement now is done. And let's see. I keep closing this. I don't mean to do that. Land movement. Debark land units at sea. Okay. So we're going to do the invasions. So I'm going to bring up the thing here. And basically what's going to happen is these units are going to invade Tsingtao, and they're invading from the one box, so we're going to have to remember that. And it's just this step that we're essentially showing that these guys are invading. They are moving into Tsingtao. And if we go then back to our rules, we are going to look now at, let's see. Okay, so we're looking at invasions. Invasions allow land units to attack enemy-held coastal hexes from an adjacent sea area. They may invade from a transport or amphibious, which is how we're doing it. This hex side is on the sea zone, so that's legitimate here. Now, even though the Germans have no units here, they do in fact have what's referred to as a notional unit. Each hex defends against an invasion with one notional land unit. In addition to any actual land units in the hex, the notional unit is the same nationality as any country with a real unit hex. If there are no real units of the same nationality as the country that controls the hex. And the strength of that is it's a base of 1. If we're defending a city hex, which we are, it becomes a 2. And then, let's see. If any unit is invading from a C box lower than the 3, which is true, so technically that would make it now a strength 3. And if any non-marine core size units are invading from a transport, that's not the case. And okay, so basically it's got a strength of 3, but one thing that the Germans can do here is, and this is going to be in the section of section on notional units, rule 11.12.1.4, says at the end of the attack declaration step, you can state that your notional unit is to be ignored. If you do, and there is no attack, and the attacker occupies the hex as if debarking onto a friendly hex. So if there's no actual attack now, or if I say there's no notional unit, as I, the German player, says, I'm going to decline the notional unit. The Japanese units simply move in here, there is no attack, and the attacker occupies the hex as if debarking into a friendly hex. Turn any non-marine unit which invaded face down after the invasion combat, unless it is invaded from an amp. So basically, I'm just going to resolve this right now. The German player wants to make this easy for the Japanese units to come in here so they can move on. So we're going to say, yep, sure, they're good to go. No notional unit. And so these guys simply land, and they take Tsingtao from the Germans. So this means the Germans are going to lose this area. That's fine. And we're going to resolve the whole special bit politically about Tsingtao. So, the capture of the German naval base, and I'm reading this in section 15.3.1 under the Japan special rules, the last paragraph. The capture of the German naval base at Tsingtao was an important step for Japan and precipitated a crisis with China. To represent this in fatal alliances, at the end of every turn that Tsingtao is German-controlled, Japan moves one space towards the Allies, which we're avoiding that entirely here. We've pulled out, basically, of Tsingtao entirely. If Japan occupies Tsingtao, which it just did, it immediately imposes the 21 demands on China. The Allies decide how China will react. If China accepts the demands, Japan keeps Tsingtao, and China cedes Foochow to Japan as well. China moves 5 spaces towards the Central Powers. So that's not great for the Allies. If China refuses the demands, Japan returns Tsingtao to China. Place any units on the production circle to arrive in 2 turns. Japan moves 4 spaces towards the Central Powers, and China moves 5 spaces towards the Allies. So this is sort of a decision for the Allies to make, depending on which of these major Asian powers would they rather have closer to their side. And one of the important things is, if Japan joins the Allies, then the Germans, the Central Powers, get no benefit to Japan controlling objectives. So in many ways, what they would probably prefer is Japan moves closer to the Allies than not. I mean, China's great and all, but I don't know. This is a tough decision, and I can kind of see some different ways to approach this and why you might choose one over the other. I think the Allies are going to just have China accept the demands. So Japan keeps Tsingtao, and technically they're going to get Foochow. Technically, this unit is going to be relocated if it was going to be in Foochow, so we'll just throw it in Canton because it doesn't really matter. So technically now, Foochow is part of Japan, and I don't really have a great way to designate that. I might do this. I'm going to clone a Japanese morale marker and just have it sort of be a control marker on Foochow. So Japan keeps Tsingtao and China cedes Foochow to Japan. And then on the actual morale chart here, what we're going to have happen is China, which is buried in here somewhere. Where did it go? Where is it? Oh god, it's going to be hard to find, isn't it? China? China? Am I missing it? I'm probably missing it somehow. Is it in here? China. Okay. I think this is meant to be on the 1. It's supposed to start here on the 1, but it's going to move 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the Central Powers, and then nothing else occurs. The opposite, if we had gone the other way, Japan would have slipped towards the Central Powers a few bits over to here, and the Allies would get China. But in this case, I think it just makes more sense to keep Japan more likely to stay allies, and they're going to maybe do some diplomacy on Japan to get them over here. So that's what the Allies decide to do. China accepts the demands, and it doesn't really give the Central Power player much other than, yeah, okay, they get another half a victory point for Tsingtao, but if the Allies can get Japan and become a full ally, then Germany will get nothing. So that's sort of the gamble the Allies are taking on this. It's hard to explain, but I think that's what we're going to do. So that's done. Now, had I kept the notional unit, an invasion would have meant that the invading units, this 11th Army and the Imperial Guard, a combat power of what is essentially 9 against the notional unit's combat power of 3, which would be 3-to-1 odds. However, the units would actually get their combat powers cut in half because invasions cut their power in half. They would get some shore bombardment bonuses instead. So if you're curious, we didn't really get to do a full run-through of what an invasion really looks like, but if you refer to the rules, you'll kind of see what it's going to take. Yeah. All land units except Marines are halved attacking across the straits or invading, so really this would have been 3 plus 4 is 7, 7 to 3, which is only 2-to-1 odds, and then we would have gotten some shore bombardment, and the shore bombardment would have been let's see, I think it is. Shore bombardment lets you support a land attack or defense with your surface vessels. Shore bombarding surface vessels would add their bombardment factors to attack or defense. Add 1 to a sea box asterisk. Yeah. Reduce the bombardment factor of each SCS by the bombardment modifier in the sea box. Add 1 to a sea box asterisk. Shore bombardment modifier in the rain or snow. So, yeah, reduce the bombardment factor. Yeah, see, that's kind of annoying. So it would have reduced the actual shore bombardment factors. Um, we would have had to. Well, I guess yeah, they would have. We would have wanted them out here. I think I screwed up some of these things. The higher sea box you're in, the better shore bombardment you're going to have. So in reality, we probably would have wanted some of these units over here instead, or at least in high as a sea box as possible, and then add their shore bombardment factors, which is sort of like adding HQ support or artillery support. Basically, you would add combat factors. So had we actually done this the real way, which we're going to deal with at some point down the line, maybe with the Commonwealth invading German places, invasions are really tough. Invasions involve, unless you're using very expensive and rare marine units, dividing your powers in half. At best, you're going to require shore bombardment, and you're going to have limited ability to do that because you need to really be up close. You need to really have a strong chain of ports that you're deploying your units from, so you can get in high sea box numbers to shore bombard strongly, and then even then, you're more likely to have units flip because these guys invaded or deployed from the appropriate naval vessels. They don't actually need to flip, so they're good to go. Though I think then the transport and the amp do flip if we're debarking units at sea, which is technically what this would be considered. Yeah, I think that's the case. So the transport units flip, the units themselves will not flip, and we control it. Again, a more efficient way to have done this is maybe only sent one unit and then sent other units elsewhere, but again, I'm just trying to demonstrate as much as I can. Again, Marines can deploy from transports fine. You're going to want non-Marine units to deploy from amphibious AMP units where possible to remove the need for them to be face down after invasion combat. Anyway, okay, so land movement is more or less done, and technically our combat over here is already resolved. Now we can look at any other combats here. So again, probably not worth it to attack here. Let's see. Oh, I guess during land combat we'd also want to maybe move this, whoops, this artillery up for stacking purposes. So this guy moves up, and now we can later cause some trouble down here, so that's good. And I don't think this guy's needed, so he's going to move just up this way for now to help support the other front. Okay, and now finally, and again, I know this video is running long. We're trying to get through it. We are gonna do some land combat on the Western Front here. We're gonna try, even though our Battle of Jutland went south on us, I think it is going to be worth punching the Commonwealth in the face land-wise and eliminate some of the British Expeditionary Force if we can. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. So, HQ benefit. So, Bulow can power up 6 units. We are going to have, let's see, we are going to power up these units. So I'm just going to mark them. And these units. And, we get one more. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe we'll just do those 5. I don't think there's anywhere else that it's really worth doing. So though we could power up 6, we're only just going to power up 5. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. And so now we are going to have these 2 units attack the British units here. So this whole little section here, 8, 9, 18 combat power, and that's 8 times 2 is 16 combat power. So overall, that's going to give them a nice 34 combat power against what is going to be by default 6. That's pretty strong. It's very strong. Okay, and then let's see. It's going to be kind of interesting how this is all going to work out. Let's see. Now here's the thing. If the French unit lends support, the French HQ, I should say, that's a man's name, not a regional designation. It's funny that the British had a commander named French, and he didn't like the French, or so I've been heard. Or I've heard of him. Okay, so the odds ratio, and we've got that. It's essentially it's almost 6-1, but not quite. So it's like plus 11 basically. Yeah, if we did 34 divided by, I want to see what the decimal point is. 34 divided by 6. Yeah, so that's a plus 11 if we were doing the fractional odds. Plus 11. And then, so if this HQ unit lends support, it's going to take a -2, but then he's going to be flipped. And if he does that, he's going to be susceptible to an attack later. And if they destroy that HQ, I mean, that's bad news for these guys. Well, I think they're gonna do it. I think they kind of have to at this point because there's just no better way. Yeah, I think they just have to, and I think they can do it being adjacent. I'm pretty sure. Must be in or adjacent to the hex. Okay, and so yeah, we're gonna have that. So we're gonna go ahead and just flip him now so that I don't forget. So that will make that a +9 because it's a -2. What you do is you divide their reorg value in half and then apply that as a modifier to the die roll. So French will do their best to help these guys. They are going to anti-observe, and I don't have any units that can actually observe unless I use this guy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So I am gonna have this Zeppelin go ahead and observe because I don't have any other use for him right now. It's going to be the end of the turn, so it's going to be a net -1 then. So that's +8 to the die roll. We're attacking engineers, and so that's actually a -1, I believe, to the die roll. Let me see. Yep. So that's going to be a +7 for the engineer. And I think that's it. So it's going to be a +7. It's going to be rough. I don't know if it's going to be enough. It could be a really bad die roll for the Germans here. Or it could be really good. We're going to find out. So that gives us a 19 result. A 19 result. So, let's see. 19 results. So that is a yellow 1/1.5 result. 1/1.5 yellow result. So, these guys are dead. So that's going to be graveyard. That's a fair bit of production too, 6 production. We're going to lose 1 unit. It's going to be 1 whole unit too. I'm going to go ahead and lose this guy here. Right away, that was a major victory. So that's going to bring us to 26 for the Germans there. That's a lot. That's a huge amount of political points. For winning a major victory here. So we lost that one. And now we're going to do advance after combat. All of these guys can advance. And they will. And this is sort of what I was afraid was going to happen. Now that HQ unit is flipped, he's kind of in trouble. He is kind of in trouble because they're going to end up getting they're going to end up potentially needing to get the heck out of Dodge or retreating because if they destroy that HQ, that's a lot of production points. And now we have to flip. Half the units don't have to flip, and so we have. Let's see. So I will flip this guy, and I will flip one of these guys, and that is as good as it's going to get. And then I'm going to get rid of the label because this is over. We didn't take anything other than the port, which isn't, I don't think that actually does anything for us. Let me check the political points. Oh, okay. We actually get a political point for taking each resource or non-objective city or port. Now, I don't know if the Commonwealth ended up getting any political points when they took that or not. I guess they wouldn't. But there you go. The Germans get even more because they've now taken Ostend. Yeah, things are going pretty well. So on a future, impulse, I'd like to be able to whack those guys, but we're gonna have to see. And then let's see. And because we know that this guy is going to go face down at the end of the impulse, I think we are going to want to do some reorganization with him. I'm pretty certain. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. So let's take a look at the reorganization rules. Okay, so because we're going to reorg, we're going to turn him face down. He's going to turn face down anyway because we used him for HQ benefits. So I'm just going to clear that. I'm going to flip him. He can basically flip 3 ground units back up, and I think what we'll do is we'll flip this guy back up. We'll turn this guy back up. And I've got one more. I can't do that HQ, but I could do him. Or maybe it'll be good just to flip him. Yeah, flip that up, and that makes this whole section nice and strong. And I can, yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll flip Big Bertha up for reorg. So 1, 2, 3, and that engineer's fine. He's flipped, but he still lends defensive bonuses, so I think we're in good shape here. Okay, so if we look at the, oops, we look at our sequence of play, which I closed again. Keep doing that. Okay, so we did land combat. Any air rebases? Yeah, we're gonna move this unit up because we essentially want to. Maybe I should have done that before, but I don't think it really matters. Yep, okay. Yeah, we should have done that before the reorg, but it doesn't really matter. We just moved him up, so now he's actually in range to help out in some pertinent areas. He's flipped. All that's good. Done, done, done. Okay, so almost 2-hour long video. I'm sorry. We look at that. We did our reorg. Almost all of our HQs, pretty much all our HQs are flipped down now, so there's not going to be a whole lot that we're really able to do. The only other option would be we could potentially unflip some units, and I may even actually want to do that. Yeah, I think I am actually going to reorg some more before the end of the turn here. The only problem is he would have needed to move. He's not quite able to make it. Okay, well, maybe I won't have him. I won't have him reorg. It's fine. It's all fine. It's all good. All right. Okay. So, end of action. So roll to end the action stage, and we will see that now. So the final action we've got for the turn then is to do the end of turn check. So last impulse. So we had all our guys do stuff. Basically, there's a 10% chance the turn ends. If not, then we go to 20% chance at the end of the allied. So we're going to roll a die. Again, if it's a 1, turn's going to end. Whew. Close. Now, what's funny is, had we passed, that would have been the end of the turn. And in hindsight, maybe it would have been better to do that. But, you know, that's how it goes. So, we'll flip this. It'll be the allied impulse on impulse number 8, where there will be a 20% chance base of the turn ending. And I think that is it. So our North Sea graveyard's getting bigger and bigger. We saw a Battle of Jutland that did not go well for the Germans, as maybe would be expected. We did see some good land combats, and the Germans are performing fairly well, though they're not very deep into France at this point, and they sure would like to be much deeper. The Serbians are going to be in a world of hurt here, and we'll probably see them try to do some strategic retreats, as they're in some big danger at the moment. And then, let's see. Everything else is just sort of stagnant, at least for the moment. Oh my, actually, okay, so there was one thing that I forgot to do, and I had it on my list of things to do. And I'm going to go ahead and resolve it now. I apologize for this. I really am sorry that I forgot about this. But I think it is important to do it. It didn't happen anywhere else on the map, so it is largely irrelevant. And that's why I'm okay with doing this. On the world map, von Lettow is going to move. And he is going to move into the jungle of North Rhodesia. It's going to use up all of his movement, and he will flip because of that. But for doing that, he has come into the Commonwealth North Rhodesia minor country, and because this is basically a 1-hex country, and it does have a minor capital, he has conquered North Rhodesia, or will conquer North Rhodesia. And regardless, now that it is enemy control of a minor capital, yeah, it's going to be a morale problem for the Commonwealth. So, let's see, is that a... Nope. So, for taking the city, that's going to be yet another political point for the Central Powers. And in the notes here, turn 1, impulse 7, Germany takes North Rhodesia, capital of, what's the name here, Lusaka? Lusaka? Where'd my notes go? Of Lusaka, -1 morale for Commonwealth. So, this is kind of an important little thing here because, yes, while there are forces of the Commonwealth to check this, my ability to now, you know, at some point later in the coming turns, take Rhodesia, or come over here to the Belgian Congo, I can start to hurt the Commonwealth and other allied morale through taking their colonies, even though they're essentially going to be doing the same thing to me before long. I, as the German player, can start to affect that and hurt them along the way, and that's what we're going to try to do. I meant to do that earlier, and it sort of slipped my mind, but it was part of my battle plan that I had written up. So, yeah, that's what we'll do. Couple of things that I'm going to have to keep in mind for the next turn as the Allies is that technically the Commonwealth and the French have not attacked yet. They've basically been on the receiving end, but they've not actually attacked. And there is a major morale penalty if you do not attack, if you launch no attacks this turn. And so that's going to be a problem, at least for the Commonwealth, because they've not been able to actually attack anything. I don't know if naval combat counts as an attack. I might have to ask that question on the forums. But at least in terms of land combat, it's going to force the French to attack, and that attack's probably not going to go, honestly, very well at all. There's going to be some major problems here for the Allies if they're not able to attack. So we're going to have to see how that runs out. I've got a note to myself to try to figure out a way for the Allies to make that attack. But currently there's not really a good, not a good way for them to do it. Okay, so I'm going to save this. We will pick this up in the next video for impulse number 8. And you know, we will kind of go from there in the next video. So thank you for watching. If you stuck around for the whole 2-hour feature-length marathon, we saw some really interesting things kind of go on, how you can manipulate your offensive points to do some extra fun stuff, and we're getting closer and closer to the end of the turn with just a huge amount of morale points lost for all these deaths in combat. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out when we work the end of turn phase. So thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time. Take care.